Cindy's Kitchen. Today we're going to show you how to make turkey and dumplings, which is also the same way you make chicken and dumplings. And it's a home style favorite that a lot of people don't realize that you can make at home with just a little bit of know-how. So what I've done so far for this is I took our Thanksgiving turkey and I put it in a stock pot with the broth from the turkey cooking, and then I added to that about 2 quarts of water with some powdered chicken broth to reconstitute it a little bit, and then I cooked it down for about 3 hours. So to cook down a chicken or a turkey carcass, you just bring it to a boil, then turn it down to simmer kind of at a low medium, because you want to do it a gentle simmer because you don't want it to be too hard and boil over. But before we go on to this, I want you to like and subscribe to my channel, and if you have any suggestions on recipes or foods you'd like me to show you how to prepare, please leave that in the comments. We love customer feedback, and we want you to be part of our family and see all of our family favorites. So please like and subscribe. And I'm going to show you how to pick apart a turkey. And you could also do this if you get a rotisserie chicken from, say, Costco. Your family has dinner on it one night, and then a couple days it sits in the fridge waiting for attention. Just throw it in a stock pot. Add some water, chicken broth, and some seasonings. Bring it to a boil and let it simmer for about 2 or 3 hours. You get a really nice rich broth. And then you can put a colander over a metal bowl, and that way you can strain out all the meat and bones and have the broth go down below, and then you could just dump that in your stock pot, which I did earlier. That was just the remains. So as you can see, about 3 hours on the stove, the turkey carcass is pretty much pulverized. So we'll be right back with you after I show you how to pull apart the turkey. You just pretty much take the pieces and break them up. The meat is really soft. I would suggest having 2 containers, one for the good meat and one for the scraps, because that way it's right in front of me and the dog is not going to jump up and steal the scraps. Yeah. She's currently on the floor trying to mind her own business, or at least looking like she is. So, all right. So we'll be back with you in a few minutes, and I will show you how to begin the process of making turkey and dumplings. And now that we're back, I'm going to show you how to separate the good meat for the soup and the scraps you can feed to your dogs.
Mm-hmm. If you have dogs.
If you have dogs. Or for people who live in the country, their livestock, their hogs or whatever. Anyway, this is some nice breast meat. I just kind of shred it with my fingers. And then this is skin. Dogs are not supposed to have skin and bones and cartilage, unless it's ground up in their dog food, I guess. But this is some scraps we had left over from carving the turkey. So this is mostly the good meat. So I'm just going to put that in our bowl of soup meat. And then, like the skin, don't feed your dogs or pets skin or bones or cartilage. It's not good for their gut, and it can make them sick. Like, here's some cartilage. That is something to throw out.
Isn't it like hard?
It's kind of hard and jelly-like. You know, some people feed it to their dogs, but what goes in must come out, and I don't want to make my dog sick.
Although the dog is like, I don't care, I want something. She's right there, just waiting.
So,
you happy about that?
This is the scraps I've set aside for the dog, just like the real soft, squishy meat and the real flat meat that's kind of like almost stringy. That's fine for animals. It just doesn't taste very good for people to eat. So, once we get all of our good meat plucked out.
And how long does it take you to do this?
It takes about a good 10-15 minutes to pick apart a turkey or a chicken. Basically, you just boil down the carcass, and it gets so soft that a lot of the meat comes off, but the skeleton of the bird collapses, so you have to pick through a lot of the vertebrae and other small bits that may not be so pleasant to look at. But this is a way you can get an extra meal out of a turkey or a chicken. So, as Dolly is pretty much drooling here, I'll show you how to, you're gonna chop up, gonna chop up the turkey. And this also helps you spot any bones you may have missed, because the last thing somebody wants in a nice juicy bit of soup is something crunchy that they weren't expecting. That has happened because there are some itty bitty bones in this big old turkey.
Don't want to break a tooth.
Yeah. So then you add this back to your soup pot. And I'm going to turn the heat back on so the broth can warm up. Because the broth has to be boiling for the dumplings. So
Or else we'll just turn to mush.
yeah, or else it can just turn to a little mush. So we're going to let that come to a boil. And then I'm going to show you how to saute vegetables to give them extra flavor and crunch for your soup. Because if you just boil the vegetables, they kind of like melt into the soup. But if you saute them with seasoning, it gives it a lot of extra flavor. So this is about 3 carrots, 3 celery stalks, and about 1 whole onion. So I just chopped it up ahead of time, and then I'm going to saute this while I'm waiting for the soup to come to a boil. At which point I'll get the dumplings ready, and then we can make the dumplings. So I'm going to turn on this burner here. And I'm just going to put a smidge of oil in here. Maybe like a teaspoon or so. It doesn't take much. If your pan is non-stick, you don't really need a lot of oil. So I'm going to dump that in there. And while that's working, I'm going to go ahead and show you how to make the dumplings. This is the same cookbook that I made the pork chop Spanish rice out of.
How old is that cookbook?
It's a Better Homes and Gardens cookbook from the mid to late 60s. So Bisquick is a good alternative for dumplings. However, I don't like the chemical aftertaste, but this is just 5 ingredients of flour, baking powder, salt, milk, and oil. And again, in here it says salad oil, but salad oil is this liquid stuff that you use, canola oil, vegetable oil, whatever. It's just fine. So let's get our dumplings ready.
What were you going to say?
I was going to say, Miss Cindy has a very rather large collection of old cookbooks that she likes to collect. And so if you're looking for a Christmas gift for Miss Cindy, an old cookbook is something I'm sure she would love to be able to.
And especially because newer cookbooks have can have so many ingredients, but old cookbooks can have like 5 ingredients or less, and then to make some of the best food ever.
Yeah, just your basic recipes.
So how much flour are you putting in there?
So I am going to triple this recipe.
Okay.
It originally calls as 5 servings, and it starts out with 1 cup of flour. But my family likes dumplings, and that's just not enough. So I found that tripling the recipe is the sweet spot to give us enough dumplings, so that way everybody can have a good amount of dumplings with their soup. And it's pretty easy. I just use this large batter bowl with the flour, and then it calls for a lot of baking powder.
Like how much?
It calls for 6 teaspoons of baking powder.
Wow.
Where did I put the baking powder?
Is that with or without the tripling?
Oh, tripling it makes it 6 teaspoons.
So without it, it's 2.
Right. So we have found the errant baking powder. Actually, it just took leave of the kitchen entirely, so I found a different canister. Because I use so much baking supplies and cooking supplies, I have extras. So, anyway, we're sauteing the vegetables, so we want to get them to where they're kind of al dente, which is firm to the bite, because we don't want squishy vegetables.
And what seasoning are you using?
I am using a garlic pepper seasoning. I just got it yesterday, and it's really good.
It wasn't like full to the brim?
Yeah, this one, once I took off the safety seal, it was packed tight. There was no shaking the contents.
And did you put anything else in there?
I put some garlic salt.
Garlic salt.
More?
Yeah, we need to get more.
We use that stuff religiously.
Yeah, pretty much. So We have our 3 cups of regular all-purpose flour, and each batch calls for 2 teaspoons. So what we're going to do is double that, triple that to make it 6. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So that's what makes them fluffy, because that's the leavening to make the biscuits. Well, dumplings are pretty much biscuits, but on top of soup. So that's pretty much what makes the biscuits, the dumplings fluff up, is the baking powder.
Makes them go boom.
Yep. And then we need 1.5 teaspoons of salt.
That's a lot of salt.
Well, this recipe is from the 60s, so. Back then, people chain smoked and drank all the time, so.
Little salt.
Little salt. Little salt. I'm going to stir that up. And then we're going to measure out the milk. It calls for 1/2 cup per batch, so triple would be 1.5 cups. And for most purposes, getting milk with fat in it is good. It gives it extra flavor. So this is 2%. That seems to be a happy medium.
So reduced fat instead of low fat?
Right, you can get non-fat, 1%, but whole milk is the preferable one for baking.
Because it's got the thickness.
Yeah. So here we have 1.5 cups of milk. I'm going to put that in there. And then to measure out the oil, there we go. So this measures oil. It calls for 6 tablespoons of oil. So we're going to do 4 tablespoons and then back again for 2. It's just easier to see it in this container. Alright, and then another 2 tablespoons. And then gotta put the cap back on so I don't knock it over.
Don't want oil everywhere.
Yep. Alright. So, and our handy dandy tool for mixing dough.
The dough mixture. Where did we get it from?
We actually got it at Michael's, I believe.
Yeah.
So, when you get mixing biscuits or dumplings in this case, the dough looks a tiny bit wet. And if it's too wet, it's not going to make good dumplings. You need to have it be a little bit dry. It's going to be squishy, but a little bit on the dry side. So, there, it's starting to come together.
What if it's too dry?
You just add a little bit more milk, and then if it's too wet, you add a little bit more flour. But this is actually a good consistency. It's going to have a little bit of pull, but not be really wet. So, we're waiting for the soup to come to a boil, and it's just about there. So we're going to stir our vegetables. They're starting to get a little brown, but that gives them extra flavor.
Just don't burn them.
Yeah, don't burn them. So the dumplings are ready. I'm going to get a cookie scoop to dump the dumplings into the soup, because that's a really good way to portion them out and make them semi-uniform.
Should you stir the soup?
We can stir the soup before we drop the dumplings in. So, here's my handy dandy scooper. I like this one because it's got the rotary thing here, and other ones have a spring here in between the two sides, and that just makes it harder to squeeze.
Where did we get that from?
I think I got it at Target.
Yeah.
And it's a KitchenAid brand, I believe.
It's very easy to use.
So the soup is ready for the dumplings. So if you ever wanted to know how to make chicken and dumplings, or in this case turkey and dumplings, this is a good tutorial on how to make them.
Well, not only that, it's also a good way to get to, you know, what would you say, finish up your turkey?
Yeah. You can get multiple meals out of a turkey. And after the soup comes to a rolling boil, you want to turn it down a little bit, because if it boils too hard, your dumplings are going to fall apart.
And about how long does it take to make this?
It probably takes about a half an hour of active cooking time. And then the dumplings are going to need to simmer with the lid on for about 15 minutes. And you don't have to be exact with dumping the dough into the pot. It's just basically making biscuits, but on top of soup. And if you're in a real pinch for time, you can even use canned biscuits cut up and put on top of soup.
Canned biscuits?
Yes. If you're desperate, even the best of us need shortcuts here and there. I just prefer the old-fashioned dumplings because they don't have that chemical aftertaste that Bisquick has. And if you have a if you have a kitchen stocked with the basics, you'll pretty much have flour and oil and baking powder and salt on hand. So you have the ingredients on hand to make them anyway. May as well make them from scratch. Kind of the same thing with making pancakes from scratch. It just takes a few of the basic ingredients. And after the dumplings are made, then I will add the vegetables back to the soup as I serve it, because I want the vegetables to get a little softer so they're not too crunchy in the soup, but enough crunchy so that you can taste them. So that's it with the dumplings. So we're going to let them cook with a lid on for 15 minutes. So let me grab the lid. And turn that down to kind of a medium flame. So we're going to let that cook for about 15 minutes and then we'll come back and show you what all this yumminess looks like. Alright, and now the moment you've all been waiting for, the great reveal. Even Dahlia is getting in on the action. Ooh. Look at the yummy pot of dumplings.
Dang.
Yeah, and now we're going to add the vegetables in just very carefully down the side. So let's just do this real quick here. This is a good way to add a lot of flavor to your soup.
Dahlia, do not do that.
Is to saute the vegetables in a skillet, because everybody knows that boiled vegetables taste about as appetizing as straight from the canned vegetables. But this way they've got flavor and they're a little on the crispy side.
So you just saute them and then put them in the bowl.
Right, put them in the soup.
Put them in the soup.
Yeah.
Saute them.
Saute them in some seasonings with a little bit of oil, and they've got some brown bits on them, which basically just adds some extra flavor. So, I'll just stir that in real quick. And look at our beautiful chicken and dumplings from scratch.
Nice.
So, and I will show you all how beautiful the dumplings look. They're nice and fluffy. Look at the nice fluffy dumplings. So the best way to serve is to scoop up a couple of dumplings into your bowl and then scoop around the bottom and get some of the vegetables and turkey from the bottom. See? A nice yummy bowl of soup. Perfect for a cold fall or winter evening, and it's a great way to use up the remains of your turkey from Thanksgiving or Christmas, or even a plain old chicken from Costco. So thank you again for joining us at Miss Cindy's Kitchen, and don't forget to like and subscribe, and please give us suggestions and feedback on our videos. We'd love to hear from you.
Thank you for watching Miss Cindy's Kitchen. To get more recipes like this one, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell for notifications when new videos are uploaded. Share it out to your friends, family, neighbors, and leave us a comment to let us know how this recipe worked for you. And don't forget to hit that like button. Again, thank you for watching Miss Cindy's Kitchen.